My mom criticized me as a stupid child at Christmas, so I told her how much I had been financially supporting the family. The room went dead silent. I always thought Christmas would be the moment I could finally share the good news that would make my family proud, the engagement to the love of my life and the promotion I had worked so hard for. But instead, that night shattered everything between us. In all honesty, it was probably the nicest thing that ever happened to me. To really comprehend it, you must first grasp what it was like to grow up. I was always the middle child in my family, which meant that I was almost invisible. My older brother, Lucas, was the golden boy. My mother, Catherine, thought he could do no wrong. He's now a doctor, and she never lets people forget. Then there was Sophia, my younger sister, the darling baby, the tiny princess who got away with everything and eventually became a great lawyer. And I, Emma, was stuck in the midst, constantly scurrying, desperate to earn even a portion of the attention and love they appeared to receive so easily. From the time I was old enough to understand our family dynamics, I understood I needed to work twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. Lucas could bring home B's and be complimented, whereas I had to maintain straight A's simply to get a mere nod of attention. Sophia threw tantrums and broke things, which was cute. She was simply expressing herself. However, if I even raised my voice, I was being rude and need an attitude correction. I recall spending numerous hours in high school working part-time at the neighborhood grocery shop and tutoring younger students. Not because we needed the money, but because I genuinely believed that if I could contribute monetarily, my parents would finally recognize my importance. I saved every penny to buy flowers for my mother on Mother's Day, jewelry for her birthday, and thoughtful Christmas gifts that I spent weeks selecting. Lucas and Sophia would get something last minute from the mall, and their gifts usually resulted in the largest smiles and the longest hugs. College was meant to be my new beginning, my opportunity to show myself in an area I was enthusiastic about. I selected marketing because I enjoyed the creativity, strategy, and ability to present a story that resonated with people. But when I told my family about my major, my mother's face sank. It was as if I had just stated that I was dropping out completely. "Marketing," she remarked, her voice full of displeasure. "That's not a real career, Emma. That's just playing with pretty pictures and slogans. Why can't you be more like Lucas and choose something that actually helps people? Or like Sophia, something that requires real intelligence and makes a difference in the world?" Those statements stung more than I admitted at the time, but I persevered, graduated with honors, and found my first job at a tiny marketing agency downtown. I worked my way up gradually, taking on extra projects, working late, coming in early, and proving myself time and again. Every modest accomplishment, every client I acquired, every successful campaign, I'd call home, bursting with pride to deliver the news. The chats always concluded in the same manner. "That's nice, dear. Did I tell you Lucas just got published in another medical journal, or Sophia just won another case? She's really making a name for herself." For years I continued trying. I sent cards on holidays, called every week, and remembered birthdays and anniversaries. When I was 28, my parents moved into their new house, and I spent the whole vacation painting walls and arranging boxes. My siblings are too busy with their vital occupations to help. I dog-sat their German Shepherd anytime they left town. Even if I'm allergic, I'd spend the entire weekend sneezing and taking antihistamines. When my father, Edward, underwent emergency gallbladder surgery this spring, I took time off work to transport him to appointments and sat with my mother in the waiting room for 5 hours. Lucas was in surgery that day, while Sophia was in court. But I was the one who got admonished later about how I should have phoned them both more regularly for updates. The worst aspect wasn't even the absence of recognition. It was a constant comparison. Every talk eventually came back to how much more prosperous, gorgeous, and accomplished my siblings were. Family dinners were endurance tests, as I sat there listening to constant adulation for accomplishments that, while not much more amazing than my own, were regarded as Nobel Prize winners because they came from the golden children. But this past fall, things in my life began to fall into place. James and I had been dating for 3 years before he proposed on a weekend vacation to the mountains in October. The ring was simple and wonderful. More significantly, he saw me in a way that my family never did. He praised my accomplishments at work, encouraged my creative pursuits, and never made me feel as if I had to compete for his attention or favor. Around the same time, my employer promoted me to senior marketing coordinator. It included a large income rise and the opportunity to run my own staff. It was everything I had worked for. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly proud. I couldn't wait to deliver both pieces of news with my family for Christmas, hoping that this time would be different. Christmas morning began as it always did at my childhood home on Maple Street. The house was adorned exactly the same way it had been for the previous 18 years. White lights on the evergreen tree, crimson and gold ornaments acquired by my mother, and the same angel topper since I was 5. The smell of cinnamon rolls and coffee permeated the air. Christmas music played quietly. I arrived about 9 a.m., arms full of freshly wrapped gifts and a heart full of apprehensive joy. James was visiting his family in Portland, but we had planned a celebration when he returned. I'd been carrying my engagement ring in my purse for 4 months, hoping to announce it in person. My father met me at the door with one of his loving bear hugs. Edward had always been the more emotionally available father, the one who remembered to inquire about my employment and listened. "There's my marketing genius," he added, accepting the gifts. "How's the new position treating you?" I blushed. "Actually, Dad, I have some really exciting news to share with everyone." "Oh yeah, can't wait to hear it, sweetheart." My mother arrived in the doorway, wearing the red cashmere sweater I had purchased her for her birthday last year. She looked me up and down with that familiar gaze, as if she had already found fault before I even said hi. "Emma, what on earth are you wearing? That green dress makes you look washed out. Didn't I tell you that color doesn't suit your complexion, and your hair looks like you just rolled out of bed?" "Merry Christmas, Mom." I forced a smile. "I actually spent an hour on my hair this morning." "Well, you should have spent 2, she said, going to the kitchen. "Sophia looks absolutely stunning in her new navy suit. You should ask her where she shops." My sister Sophia was already in the living room, looking stunning in a fitted navy dress that likely cost more than my monthly rent. She worked for a top law firm and dressed accordingly. Lucas sat on the couch, wearing his fancy watch and fashionable sweater, going through his phone, looking for messages from the hospital. "Look who finally decided to show up," Sophia said, smirking. "We've been waiting to start presents." "I'm literally 6 minutes late because I stopped to get gas," I said, but no one seemed to listen. The gift exchange went precisely as I imagined. Lucas gave everyone gift cards that he had definitely purchased at the last minute, but they were pricey from high-end businesses. So Mom gushed about how kind and generous he is. Sophia had purchased our parents a weekend holiday to a posh spa resort, earning her 20 minutes of applause and enthusiastic planning chats. I'd spent weeks selecting personalized gifts for everyone: a vintage medical textbook related to Lucas's specialty, a beautiful leather briefcase with Sophia's initials engraved, and a custom photo album for my parents filled with family photos from the previous decade that I digitized and printed myself. "Oh, how nice," my mother commented, swiftly turning through the album. "This must have taken you some time." "I spent about 50 hours on it," I claimed. "I had to scan all the old photos and restore some damaged ones, then design the layouts." "That's sweet, dear. Lucas, show everyone that new watch your colleague gave you." And with that, the topic moved on. My father squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "This is lovely, Emma. Thank you." But the moment was already past. As the morning evolved into afternoon, additional family members arrived, including Aunt Clara, Uncle Frank, cousins Lily and Edward Jr., and my grandmother Margaret. The home was full with laughing and discussion, and I found myself drawn to the kitchen, assisting my mother with dinner preparations as I had always done. "The turkey needs to come out in 20 minutes, she said, her gaze fixed on the potatoes she was mashing. "And someone needs to set the table." "Where's Sophia?" "She's in the living room talking to Grandma Margaret." "Well, she shouldn't have to worry about kitchen work. She works so hard during the week." I bit my tongue. I worked just as hard during the week, yet it never appeared to affect these computations. As dinner time neared, my anxieties grew. I had intended to make my revelation during dessert, when everyone would be relaxed and in high spirits. I kept caressing the ring box in my purse, reminding myself that this was excellent, happy news that should unite families. But when I saw my mother's face light up whenever Lucas recounted his latest case, or Sophia mentioned her recent court victory, I began to wonder whether I was setting myself up for disappointment yet again. Dinner was served at 3 p.m. sharp, exactly like every Christmas since I can remember. The dining room table was set with my mother's finest china, the same pattern she had used for special occasions since I was a child. Grandma Margaret sat at one end, my father at the other, and the rest of us filled in the gaps, following an unspoken order that always placed me between my youngest cousin and the vacant chair where my grandfather used to sit. The talk revolved smoothly around themes I'd heard 100 times before: Lucas's new medical practice developing, Sophia's recent elevation to junior partner, and my cousin Lily's wedding plans. I contributed when asked, laughed at my Uncle Frank's awful jokes, and complimented my Aunt Clara's new hairdo, all while waiting for the appropriate time to reveal my own news. "So Emma," my grandma asked during a pause in our chat, "are you still working at that little advertising company downtown?" "Marketing company, Grandma, and yes I am. Actually I have some exciting news about that." Before I could finish, my mother jumped in. "Emma thinks making pretty pictures for businesses is the same as having a real career. I keep telling her she should go back to school for something more substantial, like nursing or teaching." "Marketing is a real career, Mom," I answered, attempting to maintain my voice level. "It's actually a field that requires a lot of strategy and analysis. I just got promoted to senior coordinator, which means I'll be leading my own team." "Oh, that's wonderful, honey," my Aunt Clara responded pleasantly. "Congratulations." "Thank you. Actually, I have even bigger news than that." I dug inside my purse and brought out the small velvet box, my heart thumping so loudly that I was sure everyone could hear it. This was it. The moment I had been planning for weeks. "James proposed," I said, opening the box and revealing the stunning solitaire ring. "We're engaged." The reaction was not what I had hoped for. After a brief moment of silence, the majority of the table offered polite congratulations. My father's expression softened into a real smile, and my grandmother reached out to squeeze my hand. But my mother's expression was unaltered, almost bored. Sophia inquired, "When did this happen?" "In October. We went to the mountains for a weekend and he proposed during a hike to this beautiful overlook. It was perfect." "October," my mother said, her voice harsh. "You've been engaged for 4 months and you're just telling us now." "I wanted to tell you in person as a family." "Well, that's just typical of you, Emma. Always so secretive. Always keeping things to yourself. No wonder we never know what's going on in your life." I sensed the usual sting of judgment masquerading as care. "I'm not secretive, Mom. I call every week. I just wanted this to be special." Lucas inquired, "What does James do again?" Despite the fact that I had told him at least 3 times. "He's a high school English teacher." "A teacher?" my mother repeated, disappointed. "Well, I suppose that's stable employment at least." The way she phrased it made it obvious what she was thinking. Not outstanding, not successful, and not good enough for her kid. Never mind that James was kind, bright, and hilarious, and treated me as if I were the most important person in his life. "He's a wonderful man," my grandmother declared firmly. "When do we get to meet him properly?" "Soon, I hope. He's with his family in Portland for Christmas, but we're planning to have dinner with everyone next month." "I hope he knows what he's getting into," Sophia replied, laughing softly. "Emma's always been the difficult one in the family." "I'm not difficult," I insisted. But my mother had already nodded in agreement. "Emma has always been challenging," she added, as if I weren't right there. "She's never quite figured out how to make things easy on herself or anyone else." The words struck me like a physical blow, but I attempted to shake them off. This was intended to be a celebration, a pleasant occasion. I could not let them spoil it. "Well, I think it's wonderful news," my father exclaimed, raising his glass of wine. "To Emma and James, may you be very happy together." A few individuals raised their glasses half-heartedly, but the atmosphere was forced and unpleasant. The talk swiftly shifted to other things, and I found myself sitting there with the ring box still in my hands, feeling smaller and more insignificant than before. As dinner was being served, my mother began into a comprehensive explanation of Lucas' most recent professional accomplishments. He'd been highlighted in a medical journal, invited to present at a conference in Chicago, and was being interviewed for a position at the university hospital. Each accomplishment was discussed in great detail, with my mother's delight nearly radiating across the table. "And Sophia," she said without pausing, "just won the biggest case of her career. The settlement was in the 6 figures, and the senior partners are talking about fast-tracking her to full partner." "That's amazing," I said, truly meaning it. "Congratulations, Sophia." "Thanks," she murmured, but her focus had already returned to her phone. I sat there listening to my siblings' praise, waiting for someone to bring up my engagement or promotion, but it never happened. It was as if I had never spoken, as if my news did not deserve more than a few seconds of attention. My mother looked directly at me and delivered the words that would permanently change our relationship. "You know, Emma, I've been thinking about this engagement of yours, and I have to be honest. I'm worried about James. I mean, what kind of man proposes to you?" The table became quiet. My cousins looked up from their phones. "What do you mean?" I inquired, fearing I already knew. Well, let's be realistic here. You're 32. You work in a job that barely pays the bills. You live in that tiny apartment, and you've never really accomplished anything significant. You're the most useless child we have. I just hope James realizes what he's signing up for before it's too late. The hush that ensued was deafening. I could feel every pair of eyes on me, waiting to see how I would respond. My Aunt Clara appeared horrified. My father was shaking his head in astonishment. Even Lucas and Sophia appeared stunned by the brutality of the comment. But for the first time in my life, instead of shrinking back and accepting it, making excuses or attempting to laugh it off, I felt something else rise up inside me. Yes, it was angry, but it was also clear. It was 32 years of hidden frustration and hurt that finally came out. I rose up slowly, my hands trembling from emotion, and looked my mother in the eyes. Then I added, "Stop calling me when you need money," with a calm and clear voice. Her face fell. The stillness that followed my statements was so complete that I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway and the faint sound of Christmas music playing in the living room. My mother's expression shifted from arrogant superiority to something I'd never seen before, genuine amazement mingled with panic. "What are you talking about?" she said, but her tone had lost all authority. "I'm talking about the $1,600 I've been sending you every month for the past 3 years to cover your car payments because Dad's business was struggling," I told you. "I'm talking about the $3,000 I gave you last spring when he needed surgery and your insurance wouldn't cover all the costs. I'm talking about the $2,000 I sent to help pay for Sophia's bar exam fees because she'd already spent her trust fund on that trip to Europe." I dug into my purse and took out my phone, launching my banking app with remarkably steady fingers despite the adrenaline rushing through my veins. "Want to see the receipts?" I asked, holding up the screen. "I have them all right here, every transfer, every check, every emergency loan that somehow never got paid back." My Aunt Clara stared at me, her mouth slightly wide. My Uncle Frank had set down his fork and listened closely. My grandmother nodded slowly, as if the parts of a puzzle were finally coming together. "Emma," my father began, but I hadn't finished. "Remember last Christmas when Lucas's student loans went into default because his new practice wasn't bringing in enough money yet? Who do you think paid those off? It wasn't Mom and Dad because they were still recovering from Dad's medical bills. It was me. For $1,000 that I'd been saving for a down payment on a house." Lucas's face had turned pale. "Emma, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know because Mom made me promise not to tell anyone. She said it would embarrass you, and that I should just consider it my contribution to the family." "My contribution?" I returned my gaze to my mother, who was opening and closing her mouth as if she were searching for words that would not come. "You want to know what kind of man proposes to someone like me? The kind who sees that I've been single-handedly keeping this family financially afloat while working my supposedly meaningless job and living in my supposedly pathetic apartment. The kind who recognizes that maybe, just maybe, I've been sacrificing my own financial security and dreams to take care of everyone else." "I never asked you to," my mother said faintly. "You absolutely did ask. You called me crying about the car payments. You called me panicking about Dad's surgery. You called me begging for help with Sophia's fees. And every single time I helped because that's what families do. But apparently that's what the useless child does while the successful ones get all the credit and none of the responsibility." Sophia finally spoke up in a small voice. "I didn't know you paid for my bar exam. Because I wasn't supposed to tell you. Just like I wasn't supposed to tell anyone about the money I've been lending Mom and Dad, or the payment I made on Lucas's loans, or the countless other times I've bailed this family out of financial trouble." I reopened my banking app and started reading actual numbers and dates. September 15th, 2022, $1,600 to Catherine Walsh for car payment. October 3rd, $1,600 to Catherine Walsh for car payment. On November 7th, Edward Walsh received $2,000 for medical expenses. Catherine Walsh received $1,600 on December 19th for her auto payment. My father was staring at my mother with a look I hadn't seen before. "Catherine, is this true?" "It's not what it sounds like," she responded swiftly. "Emma was just helping out temporarily while we got back on our feet." "Temporarily?" I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "It's been 3 years, Mom. 3 years of monthly payments. 3 years of me prioritizing your financial stability over my own. 2 years of me living paycheck to paycheck while you drove around in a car I was paying for, complaining about how unsuccessful your useless daughter is. My grandmother leaned across the table to hold my hand. Honey, why didn't you tell any of us about this? Because I thought if I could just help enough, if I could just prove my value to this family in some way, maybe I'd finally earn the love and respect that Lucas and Sophia seemed to get for free. I thought if I could be useful, even if it was just financially, maybe Mom would stop looking at me like I was a disappointment. I had been holding back tears for years, and they were finally coming. However, they were no longer tears of despair. They were tears of relief, tears of finally uttering a truth I'd been holding in for so long. You want to know what James sees in me? I asked, my voice rising stronger. He sees someone who's been working 2 jobs to support her family while they belittle her career. He sees someone who's been giving up her own dreams and financial goals to make sure everyone else in her family is okay. He sees someone who's been the real backbone of this family while being treated like she's worthless. Lucas shook his head. Emma, I had no idea. If I'd known you were the one who paid off my loans, you'd what? You'd have treated me with basic respect. You'd have defended me when Mom made her snide comments, because that's all I ever wanted. Not gratitude, not praise, just basic human decency. I glanced to Sophia, who was looking down at her plate. And you? Do you have any idea how many times I've covered for you? Not just financially, but in every other way. When you were too hungover to help Mom move, who do you think spent her weekend packing boxes? When you were too busy to visit Dad in the hospital, who do you think sat with him for hours? Emma, my dad said. I'm so sorry. I had no idea your mother was asking you for money because she made me promise not to tell you. She said it would hurt your pride, and that you were the most financially stable one. It was my responsibility to help. Funny how I went from being the most useless to the most financially stable, depending on what she needed from me. My mother found her voice again. You're being dramatic, Emma. Families help each other, that's what we do. No, Mom. What families do is support each other emotionally and treat each other with respect. What you do is take my money while telling everyone how worthless I am. What you do is use me as a financial safety net while treating me like an embarrassment. I up and moved my chair away from the table. Well, congratulations, you're about to find out exactly how useless I really am because as of today, the bank of Emma is permanently closed. My revelation sparked an instant and tumultuous response. As soon as I declared that I was no longer serving as the family's financial safety net, various conversations broke out around the table. My Aunt Clara demanded to know how long this was going on. My Uncle Frank was asking my father if he knew about the money. My grandmother looked at my mother with intense disappointment. Emma, wait, my mother murmured, standing up while I collected my bag and coat. Let's talk about this privately. Our family business. I returned my gaze to her. You mean the family business where you humiliate me in front of these same people every chance you get? The family business where you announce to everyone that I'm the most useless child you have? I think they're entitled to know the truth about how this family really operates. You're being vindictive, she said, her voice quivering. I'm being honest. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being completely honest about what's been happening in this family. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe you should ask yourself why. My cousin Lily spoke from across the table. Emma, are you serious about the money? You've really been supporting them financially? Dead serious. I can show you bank statements going back years if you want proof. My father stared at my mother, confused and angry. Catherine, we need to talk right now. Not in front of everyone, she snapped. Why not? You had no problem discussing Emma's failures in front of everyone. You had no problem announcing to the entire table that she's useless. So why is it suddenly inappropriate to discuss the truth? Lucas eventually spoke up, his voice subdued. Emma, about my student loans. I genuinely didn't know. I thought Mom and Dad had helped me out. I understand you didn't know, I said. And I intended it. None of you knew because I was specifically told not to tell you. But Lucas, can I ask you something? In all the years we've been adults, have you ever once asked me if I needed help with anything? Have you ever inquired about my finances, my career struggles, my personal life beyond the bare minimum? He was silent for a long time. No. He eventually conceded. I guess I assumed you were doing fine. You assumed I was doing fine because it was easier than actually paying attention to my life. Just like it was easier for Sophia to assume someone else would handle the family emergencies, and easier for Mom to assume I'd always be there to bail everyone out while she criticized everything about me. Sophia eventually looked up from her dish. I don't understand why you didn't just say no if you didn't want to help. Because I did want to help, I exclaimed. I wanted to help because I love this family despite everything. I wanted to help because I thought maybe if I proved my value in some tangible way, I'd finally be treated like I mattered. But I realize now that no amount of financial help can ever change how you guys perceive me. My grandma cleared her throat, and the room became quiet. When Margaret Walsh talked, everyone listened. She had been the matriarch of our family for as long as I could remember, and her opinion was respected. Catherine, she began, her voice severe in a way I'd rarely heard. I am deeply disappointed in you. This young woman has been sacrificing her own financial security to help this family, and you've been treating her like she's worthless. That's not just ungrateful, it's cruel. Mother, you don't understand the whole situation, my mother began. I understand enough. I understand that Emma has been working 2 jobs to support herself and apparently half this family, while you've been telling everyone who'd listen that she's not good enough. I understand that she just announced her engagement, which should be one of the happiest moments of her life, and instead of celebrating with her, you used it as an opportunity to tear her down. The room was silent save for my mother's fast breathing. I had never seen her mother call her out that directly before. And another thing, my grandmother went on. I've watched this girl grow up, and she's never been anything but kind, generous, and hardworking. If she's the most useless child you have, Catherine, then you have no idea how to measure a person's worth. My Aunt Clara nodded emphatically. I have to agree with Mom, Emma. I had no idea you were dealing with all of this. I always wondered why you seemed so stressed during family gatherings. I wasn't stressed, I replied gently. I was exhausted, emotionally, financially, physically exhausted from trying to be enough for a family that had already decided I never would be. My mother made one final attempt to regain control of the narrative. Emma, you're making this sound much worse than it is. We're family, we help each other. No, Mom. What families do is support each other emotionally and treat each other with respect. What you do is take my money while telling everyone how worthless I am. What you do is use me as a financial safety net while treating me like an embarrassment. I headed near the door but turned around once more. My wedding is going to be beautiful. James and I are going to build a wonderful life together, and we're going to do it without the constant criticism and emotional manipulation that I've been accepting as normal for the past 32 years. Anyone who wants to be part of that life with respect and kindness is welcome. Anyone who doesn't can keep my phone number for emergencies, but don't expect me to answer. And with that, I walked out of my childhood home, leaving behind a table full of stunned faces and a mother who had finally known what it was like to be the one left speechless. The week after Christmas was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My phone began ringing before I even arrived home that evening, and it didn't stop for days. But for the first time in my adult life, I didn't answer every call right away. I wasn't giving up everything to control other people's emotions or solve their problems. James had returned from Portland 2 days earlier, when I called him crying from my car in my parents' driveway. He discovered me sitting on my couch around 11 p.m. That night, still dressed for Christmas, I stared at my phone, which hummed with incoming calls and text messages. I can't believe I actually did that, I kept saying. I can't believe I finally said all of that out loud. I can, he murmured, bringing me closer. I've been waiting for you to stand up to them for 3 years. I just didn't want to push because I knew you had to get there on your own. But what if I was wrong? What if I was too harsh, Emma? He spoke softly. You've been paying your mother's car payment for 3 years while she told people you were useless. There's no universe in which you were too harsh. The messages began pouring in that night and lasted for days. My father called first, his voice thick with what appeared to be genuine regret. Emma, honey, I had no idea your mother was asking you for money. I'm so sorry. If I'd known, Dad, it's not just about the money. It's about the way she's treated me my entire life. The money was just the final straw. I know, sweetheart. I've been thinking a lot about that since you left, and you're right. I should have stood up for you more over the years. I should have said something when she made those comments. It was the first genuine apology I'd ever gotten from anyone in my family, and it meant more than I could say. Lucas called the following day. Emma, I feel terrible about the loan situation. I want to pay you back." "It's not about paying me back, Lucas. It's about the fact that for all these years, you've been perfectly happy to assume that someone else would handle family problems while you focused on your career. You never once asked if I needed help or support." "You're right," he replied gently. I guess I always saw you as the strong one, the one who had everything figured out. I was the one who couldn't say no. There's a difference." Sophia waited 3 days to call, and she was guarded. "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic about this, Emma. Families help each other out. It's not like anyone forced you to give us money." "Sophia, do you remember what you said to me at dinner? You said I was the difficult one in the family. Do you have any idea how that felt coming right after Mom called me useless?" "I was just joking around. It wasn't a joke to me. It never is. Do you realize that between you and Lucas, I can't remember the last time either of you said something genuinely kind about me? The last time you supported me or celebrated something good happening in my life?" She was silent for a long time. "I guess I never thought about it that way. That's the problem. None of you think about it. You take my support for granted while treating me like I'm the burden." My mother, understandably, was the most insistent. She made 6 calls on December 28th alone, leaving more frantic voicemails. "Emma, this is ridiculous. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. Emma, you're being incredibly selfish. Your father is upset, and this is affecting the whole family. Emma, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this attitude needs to stop. We're your family." On December 28th, she took a different strategy. "Emma, honey, I think I may have spoken too harshly at dinner. Maybe we can work something out about the money situation." But it wasn't until December 30th that she called and spoke the words I'd been waiting 32 years for. "Emma, I was wrong. I'm sorry." I almost did not answer the phone. I'd been screening her calls for days, and James had been encouraging me to take my time before responding, but something about the 10th ring compelled me to pick up. "Hello, Mom." "Emma, thank God. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you." "I'm listening." "Your father and I have been talking, and I think I owe you an apology. A real one." I waited for him. "What I said at dinner was unforgivable. You're not useless. You're the opposite of useless. You've been God, Emma. You've been holding this family together, and I've been treating you terribly." It was the closest thing to a sincere apology I'd ever received from her, but I wasn't ready to let down my guard entirely. "Mom, it's not just what you said at dinner. It's been a pattern my entire life. The constant criticism, the comparisons to Lucas and Sophia, the way you dismiss my career and my accomplishments." "I know," she said, her voice cracking. "I know, and I don't have a good excuse for it. I think maybe I saw myself in you, and I was harder on you because of it." "What do you mean?" "I was the middle child too. I know what it's like to feel invisible, and instead of protecting you from that feeling, I think I made it worse. I think I pushed you harder because I wanted you to be stronger than I was." It wasn't a whole explanation, and it wasn't an excuse, but it was the first time my mother showed me genuine vulnerability or self-awareness. "The money stops, Mom. All of it. No more car payments, no more emergency loans, no more bailing anyone out. I understand. You're right to stop. We never should have put that burden on you. And the criticism stops too. I'm not going to tolerate being belittled anymore, especially in front of other people. Okay, I'll try to do better." "Don't try, Mom. Do better. Because if you can't, James and I will build our life without this family's involvement." It was an ultimatum, but it seemed justified. For the first time in my life, I was creating clear boundaries with consequences that I was willing to enforce. 3 months later, my life had drastically changed. The incessant financial worry was vanished, replaced by something I'd never known before. Actual savings. For the first time since college, I had money left over at the end of the month. James and I opened a joint savings account and began planning not only our wedding, but our future together. The emotional shift was considerably more pronounced. Without the continual burden of family drama and financial demands, I felt lighter, more confident, and more like myself. My work performance increased significantly once I was no longer distracted by family emergencies and guilt-inducing phone calls. My employer observed the change and hinted at future promotion prospects. "You seem different lately," she commented at my quarterly review. "More focused, more assertive in meetings." Whatever you're doing, keep it up. I was doing something I'd never done before, prioritizing my personal well-being. The family relationships changed substantially after the financial safety net was withdrawn. My father, it turned out, was absolutely oblivious of how much money my mother had borrowed from me. When he realized the full extent of it, he was enraged. 2 years, Catherine, you've been taking money from our daughter without telling me. They ended up going to financial therapy together, which should have happened years before. My father took on a part-time consulting job to augment their income, and my mother eventually realized they had been living beyond their means. Lucas and Sophia, meantime, were forced to confront their own beliefs about family support. Lucas contacted me 7 weeks after Christmas with a surprising news. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," said the man, "about how I never asked if you needed help. And you're right. I was so focused on my own problems that I never considered you might have your own." "I appreciate you saying that," I quipped. "I want to do better, and I want to start by asking, is there anything you need help with? Anything I can do to support you?" It was a basic question, but none of my siblings had asked it before. We ended up discussing my job aspirations, relationship with James, and future plans. For the first time as adults, Lucas appeared to be truly interested in my existence as a person, rather than as a family obligation. Sophia took her time waking up. She remained sensitive about the money issue, and appeared to interpret my boundary setting as a personal attack rather than a required shift. But even she began to change her mind, particularly after a talk with our grandma. Margaret had allegedly confronted both of my siblings about their treatment of me over the years. "Your sister has been sacrificing for this family while you two were building your careers," they'd heard her say. "The least you can do is treat her with the respect she deserves." My connection with my mother remained the most complex. She was definitely trying to change her behavior, but decades of set habits do not evaporate overnight. She'd catch herself in the middle of a criticism and apologize, or she'd try to ask about my work in a way that wasn't disparaging. It felt forced at first, but it eventually became more genuine. The real test came when James and I began planning our wedding. I'd been dreading the expected criticism and attempts to control the situation. To my astonishment, my mother kept most of her opinions to herself. When she did make suggestions, she prefaced them with phrases like, "just an idea," or "only if you think it would work." "I like the photographer you chose," she commented during one of our preparation sessions. "The samples you showed me are beautiful." It was such a simple, encouraging phrase that I nearly didn't know how to respond. This was what a good family interaction should look like. My father, on the other hand, plunged himself into wedding planning with an unexpected level of excitement. He volunteered to assist with costs, insisted on escorting me down the aisle, and spent hours researching locations and suppliers with me. It was as if he was attempting to make amends for years of ignoring my mother's criticisms. "I'm so proud of you," he told me one afternoon as we tried pastries from a city bakery. "Not just for standing up to your mother, but for building such a good life for yourself. James is a lucky man." Those remarks came from my father and meant everything. The biggest surprise was how many more family members contacted out to support me after hearing the whole tale. My Aunt Clara started phoning on a regular basis to check in. My cousin Lily asked if she could help with the wedding plans. Even some of my more distant relatives attempted to connect with me in ways they had never done before. "I always sensed there was tension," clarified my aunt, "but I never realized how bad it was. Your mother has always been intense, but I didn't know she was being so unfair to you." It turned out that various family members had seen the relationship over time, but had not felt comfortable intervening. My Christmas outburst had given them permission to confront what they had been witnessing but ignoring. The most significant adjustment occurred in my relationship with James's family. Without the continual drain of my own family's conflict, I was able to focus more emotional energy on developing relationships with his parents and siblings. They greeted me with an openness and warmth that I had never known. And for the first time, I realized what healthy family dynamics looked like. "Your family is so normal," I said James after a Sunday dinner with his parents, during which no one criticized anyone, and everyone appeared to be truly delighted to be there. "Yours can be too," he added. "It just takes time and boundaries." He was correct. Some of my family ties were slowly healing, with clear expectations and repercussions. Not all of them, and not entirely, but enough to give me hope that the future will be different than the past. 6 months after that Christmas meal, James and I got married in a quiet ceremony at a historic inn about an hour outside of town. The guest list was carefully vetted to include only those who had expressed real support for our relationship and respected both of us as individuals. My father accompanied me down the aisle, tears in his eyes. My grandmother sat on the front row, beaming with pride. My mother was also present, dressed wonderfully and behaving precisely, but I could tell she was struggling to keep her normal remark to herself. Lucas and Sophia both came, and they appeared really thrilled for us. But the folks who mattered the most were those who had always backed me. James's family, who had welcomed me since the beginning. My Aunt Clara and Cousin Lily had been valuable sources of emotional support. And my longtime friends, who had witnessed my battle with family dynamics for years and were overjoyed to see me finally standing up for myself. My grandmother hugged me after the ceremony and whispered, "You look radiant. Not just beautiful, but truly happy. That's what I've been waiting to see." During the reception, my father delivered a speech that moved me to tears. "Emma has always been the heart of our family," he told me, "even when we didn't appreciate her properly. She's kind, generous, hardworking, and loyal to a fault. James, you're not just marrying a wonderful woman. You're marrying someone who will move heaven and earth for the people she loves. I just hope you never take that for granted the way some of us have." It was his public admission of the years of unbalance, which meant everything to me. Even my mother was able to offer something appropriate during her quick words. "Emma, I'm sorry it took me so long to see what an amazing daughter I have. I hope you and James build a beautiful life together." Our relationship was not completely repaired, but we made progress. The most crucial moment of the day, however, occurred during our first dance. As James and I swayed to music in front of everyone who truly cared about us, I realized I was experiencing something I'd never felt before at a family gathering. Total, genuine happiness. "No regrets," James whispered into my ear. "None," I replied, and I meant it totally. The months that followed were revelatory. Marriage to James exceeded my expectations. We bought a house together with the money I'd saved since I quit financing my family's lifestyle. We traveled. We entertained our friends. We created our own traditions. My career grew in ways I never believed imaginable. Without the continual emotional drain of family conflict, I had more energy to devote to my profession than I had ever had before. I ran great campaigns, developed excellent client connections, and received the promotion my supervisor hinted at. The girl who had been labeled useless suddenly managed her own department. Some family connections improved gradually. My father and I formed a true bond, talking about everything from business, novels, and his new love of carpentry. Lucas made genuine efforts to be there in my life, calling to check in and even seeking my counsel on personal issues. My grandmother became one of my closest confidants, someone I could open up to about everything without fear of being judged. My relationship with my mother remained complex yet functioning. She still struggled with her tendency to criticize, but she caught herself more frequently and made genuine attempts to be supportive. When I told her I was thinking about going back to school for an MBA, she surprised me by saying, "That sounds like a wonderful opportunity. You'd be excellent at it." It wasn't the enthusiastic support I might have gotten from Lucas or Sophia, but it was respectful and encouraging, which was more than I could have expected from her. Sophia and I reached a friendly but distant agreement. We were courteous at family gatherings and exchanged pleasantries, but we never formed the close friendship I wished for. That was fine though. I'd learned that not all family connections can be repaired. And that's not always a sign of personal failure. The most fundamental transformation occurred internally. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't always looking for approval or proving my value. I knew who I was, what I'd accomplished, and how I contributed to my relationships. James's love and respect taught me what it was like to be valued for who I truly was. And I had come to value myself in the same manner. One evening, nearly a year after our wedding, James and I were eating supper when my phone called. It was my mother, which was not unusual at the time, but there was something strange about her voice. "Emma, I need to tell you something," she said. "Your father and I were at the grocery store today, and I ran into Mrs. Thompson from down the street. She was asking about you, and I found myself telling her about your promotion and your new house, and how proud I am of you, and then I realized, I don't think I've ever actually told you that." "Told me what, Mom?" "That I'm proud of you. That I've always been proud of you, even when I was too stubborn or too focused on what I thought success should look like to admit it. You're an incredible woman, Emma. You're kind and strong and successful and generous, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say that out loud." I had been waiting for this conversation my entire life. And it arrived at a moment when I no longer required it to feel whole. However, the fact that it felt sincere rather than desperate added to its importance. "Thank you, Mom," I replied. "That means a lot." "I love you, sweetheart. I should have been saying that more often too." "I love you too." After I hung up, James smiled at me. How does it feel? Good, I said, and I was astonished to learn I had meant it. It feels really good, but also I think I would have been okay either way. And it was the true victory, not that my family had finally learnt to respect me, which was amazing. The true accomplishment was that I had learned to respect myself enough to demand better treatment and create a life that did not rely on their approval for happiness. I had discovered that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to quit supporting bad behavior. I had discovered that financial and emotional independence went hand in hand. Most significantly, I discovered that the family you select can be just as essential as the one you're born into. Surrounding yourself with individuals who recognize your worth does not make you selfish. It makes you whole. The little girl who had spent her life trying to earn love had matured into a woman who understood that she was already deserving of love. That made a huge impact. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took your support for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps someone else find the courage to speak their truth. Wishing you all the strength to know your worth and the courage to demand the respect you deserve.